Welcome everyone to our second panel under the Inclusive Digital Economy stream of Pathway to 17 Summit, which I'm very excited to be moderating again, as I saw you yesterday on our panel on regional harmonization towards inclusive digital economies. So today I bring to you an exciting panel as well, where we have Ravi from Digital Planet, which is under Fletcher School. And we've got Ali Schmidt-Fellner, please forgive me for mispronouncing your surname. And we've got Nothando Nxumalo. Before I allow our guest speakers to introduce themselves, I first would like to just establish some housekeeping rules. Please feel free to share any and all questions you have in the Q&A on Swapcard, and those will be shared with us so I can ask them to the panel that we have in front of you. And we'll try at our best to answer all of them within the time that we have, which is 45 minutes. And also, please try to engage each other's with each other's questions as well. I'll try to post a poll within Swapcard for you to also engage with, and those results will be interesting to see, and we'll try to discuss those if the time fits. But 45 minutes seems long. I've realized over time and over speaking at many events that flies by very quickly. And next thing you know, someone's telling you that your time's running out, and you're like, but we were just getting started. So let me not take more time and give the floor starting with Ravi. Please introduce yourself to our participants, and I hope they do enjoy our session today with us.
Hello and a good day to everyone from wherever in the world you are. You've dialed in, and thank you for spending your time with us. My name is Ravi Shankar Chaturvedi. I am the co-founder and director of research at Digital Planet. It's a program where we study how technology is impacting countries, consumers, corporations, the commons, and we look at how and we study how digital technologies in particular can be a force for good and can become a spur in fostering inclusive economic growth.
I'll move on to you, Nothando.
Thanks, Nolwazi. I'm Nothando Nxumalo. I'm from the Central Bank of Eswatini. I'm currently in the Kingdom of Eswatini. I work as a manager, IT governance and innovation. I'm super excited to be part of this panel, speaking to all things digital economy and how we can foster inclusion in such an economy. Thanks, Nolwazi.
Thank you, Nothando. And over to you, Ali.
Hi, everyone. Pleasure to be with you today. Thanks for the opportunity to participate in the panel. My name is Ali Schmidt-Fellner. I am Director of Research and Impact at the MasterCard Center for Inclusive Growth, which is the social impact hub of MasterCard. And our mission is to advance an inclusive digital economy around the world. Looking forward to the conversation.
Thank you so much for everyone and taking your time to introduce yourselves. I hope that now everyone has a sense or a better feel of who's here, what kind of questions you can ask them, and where our discussion might possibly be headed as we ask the question, what does an inclusive digital economy look like? Because we're hearing this buzzword, digital economy, digital era, digital world, but what exactly does it look like? If you and I are now living in it, and we say our world is a digital, our country is a digital jurisdiction, what exactly does it look like? So I'd like to pose this question to my guest speakers and say, what do we exactly mean by digital economy? Because that's so vast, you can easily get lost in that topic. So how could you simplify it or square it down to help our participants listening in today understand the concept of digital economy?
Nolwazi. Can I go first?
Yeah, you can go first.
It just basically means every aspect of the economy uses the web. It means it covers business, economic activity, social and cultural. Everything is on the web, and it uses digital technologies. Just in a nutshell.
Okay. Anyone else want to jump in on that question?
I'm happy to follow up from Nothando. I think that's really well said and very well simplified. Glad we're level setting because, as you've mentioned, it is a vast, ecosystem. But I would say, a digital economy includes economic activity that results from online connections between people, businesses, data, and devices. And I think that word connections is really key for the conversation. And, the digital economy can give people the opportunity to consume goods, services, and information differently, more frequently. I think we'll get further into the conversation about how we ensure that that is indeed the trajectory, that we increase that opportunity.
Thank you, Ali. Any comments from you, Ravi?
Oh, these are difficult acts to follow, but I'll as the resident academic at the table and the recovering banker, I will throw our two bits to this. I mean, it's helpful to think of the digital economy as in some sense a manifestation of a larger process. The process being digitalization. We have a working definition of what digitalization is. It is a process where everyday human interactions, with the government, with businesses, between consumers and businesses, and between fellow humans, and both as in peer-to-peer, and the consumption of goods, services, information, and ideas are primarily conducted through the use of internet and internet-based technologies and services. Now, what this process of digitalization tends to get us to is, a digitally enabled society. And there are three large, very broad aspects that digitalization tends to influence. One, it enables the well-being, or it ought to enable the well-being of citizens. It ought to, create and foster effective institutions. And the third, and equally important, is a robust economy. Now, a digital economy is where we, is where, the things that we do that makes, shall we say, commerce work, the way we buy, the way we sell, dwell, work, play, pay, are increasingly conducted using digital means. So I'm kind of giving a broader definition to kind of give us enough scope to discuss in the subsequent, in the rest of the panel, where inclusivity and why inclusivity matters.
Thank you, Ravi. And you're just touching on to my next question, because we're talking about digital economies, but the stream is all about inclusive digital economies. So when we add that word inclusive, what does it bring to the table, and how can we ensure that it really does include everyone? Because that word inclusive is multidimensional now. So we're not just talking about including the individuals, but including the entities, the small businesses, and so on. So how can we really ensure that everyone is included in the digital economy, given the barriers that everyone knows and some of the indirect barriers that are not so well known? So we can start with you, Ravi, so you can continue from your previous.
Oh, I'm in the hot seat again. All right. So I'm actually going to take, quote, since we have a fellow panelist from MasterCard, the former CEO and chairman of MasterCard, Ajay Banga, who very pithily said, we cannot have the internet of everything without the inclusion of everyone. Therein lies and he's in that very pithy quote, what he's trying to really capture is, by 2030 there will be about 50 billion devices connected to the internet. Think of devices that are, any one of you probably at any given point in time has at least 3 devices: a laptop, a handheld, potentially, another handheld, or some device at home that is connected to the internet. I mean, so when you think of all these devices, on the planet, there roughly be about, the projection is that there will be about 50 billion devices connected, authorized by, and sometimes not, by humans, connected to the internet. But there are about 3 billion people who are still yet to be connected to the internet. So that is the paradox. So there is technology has been making a forward march in a way that it is leaving a lot of people behind. So what does it mean to have an inclusive digital economy? An inclusive digital economy is where we use these technologies to make sure that those that are left behind, A, aren't left behind, and B, have a fair shot at participation in the marketplace, at participation in civil society, at getting their voices heard and making their voices count.
Well, that was really well said, Ravi. And, you teed me up so well with the quote from our CEO. So I'll just build on what you said by mentioning, because this has been such an emphasis for MasterCard, advancing a digital economy for all, we actually wanted to create a framework to think about what an inclusive economy means. And so we authored a report called Built for All. Happy to share it out in the readout from this panel. And it outlines a global framework for building inclusive economies. And we interviewed 30 subject matter experts, ranging from economists to policymakers, practitioners, to land on the framework. And what we really got down to was 3 key pillars for inclusive growth. And a lot of them they are very much in line with how Ravi described it. But 1, equitable access to resources and opportunities. So in the context of the digital economy, that's access to digital education and upskilling, connectivity, devices. The second is a level playing field for work and competition. So ensuring broadband is affordable, for example, that employers are setting up workers for remote settings equally as we advance into sort of the remote work world around work world. And lastly, and I think this is an important dimension, is the collective stewardship of shared resources for future generations. And so inclusion to us also means thinking about outcomes for future generations, setting up systems that think about the long term rather than just short-term gains.
I think Ali and Ravi have covered all of that, because I was going to say access is very important. And then digital literacy is also important. Also, the infrastructure, the digital infrastructure of the economy is important, just to make sure that everyone can access. Even the rates needs to be cheaper for us to be able to participate in this digital economy. So yeah.
Thank you all for expanding on this, so that it's clear that digital economy is not especially just a one-time event, and that it's not a technology issue, but that it's an ecosystem concerning issue, and it's a continuous dynamic event, and not something you view as a picture on your cell phone, as opposed to it's a movie with many sequels, so like the Marvel Cinematic Universe with different phases, if I can put it that way. And we're still sort of, I think, in the first phase, moving to the second, and we're picking up some learnings We haven't met Dr. Strange yet. He's coming a bit later on along the way. So another question that I have for you, now that we've laid the groundwork, we know what digital economy is. We know what the word inclusive adds to the definition of a digital economy. So now I just want to ask you a question on an adjacent side, where now maybe Nothando is because she works in this every day, might have some more words to say, is especially on the first one, on question A. So who needs to make what happen? So the first part of that is, what role do policy and regulation play towards building an inclusive digital economy? Let me stop there and hear what your thoughts are before I move on to the next two. Because it's not just a Ministry of Finance or Ministry of ICT only endeavor. This is a multi-stakeholder endeavor, because again, it's not just a digital money issue like a CBDC, which would be the responsibility of, let's say, the mandate or prime responsibility of the central bank and the Ministry of Finance. But a digital economy now speaks to smart data per se, if I can call it that, that touches on every sector of the economy. So whose responsibility, or rather what role do policy and regulation play towards building or developing an inclusive digital economy?
I think with this one, it's inclusion does require deliberate effort from policymakers. This is government, investors, the business community, everybody else, and the thought leaders of that jurisdiction to create national policy frameworks that promote inclusion. So you need the frameworks to exist at the highest level of that country, if I may say. So these policies must speak to how are we going to protect our citizens, the environment, how are we going to keep competition fair and the tax base sustainable while operating within this digital economy. So you need the framework to exist at the highest level of that country, if I may say.
Do any of you want to add, Ravi and Ali? Well, I'll move on to the next part.
I'm happy to take a stab. And this is a question. It's a terrific question. It's something that we think about a lot at Digital Planet. Which and we've been thinking about it for at least 10 years now, where we study the role of institutions in building digital economies, and in particular building and fostering inclusivity in the digital economies that are built. We study this across 90 countries, and we've been doing this for nearly a decade now, where we study the drivers of digitalization, and and I'm happy to share the interactive index and the report with the crowd here. We look at, among the, we think of 4 drivers, and there could be many, but we largely think of them as 4 drivers. We look at drivers of supply, drivers of demand, innovation that is happening without or in spite of, all the other factors, and most importantly, institutions. Now, institutions have a tremendous role to shape both the rules of the road and, in some sense, lay the road where, in a way that markets can come in and play eventually. So institutions have a dual role. So, and beyond, creating, a safe society where rule of law prevails, you kind of have to think of institutions as being critical to creating a marketplace that favors none and creates a level playing field. Now, each one of these layers is important. The third and the most important layer, especially in a digital economy context, is creating the rules of the road and norms for an inclusive digital economy to happen. Of the many things that need to, that policy and regulation have a role to play in, the biggest is how data are governed. I mean, rules and regulations around that guide the collection, the usage, storage, disposal. Who benefits from that data? How are these benefits, distributed in a way that, again, it is inclusive and it is not extractive. Those are extremely important aspects that, policy and regulation, policymakers and institutions have to think about. And that's how an inclusive digital economy is regulated.
Thank you for those insights, Nothando and Ravi. Ali, do you want to add anything? Or will you add, because I want to combine the last two parts of this question and pose them to all three of you.
Yeah, feel free.
So, under who needs to make what happen, who needs to do what to make this happen is, what role do enterprises play and what is the role of technology here? So now we're looking at it from the enterprise side, and under what does an inclusive digital economy look like? And what is the role of technology in shaping what an inclusive digital economy will look like?
Great. Yeah, no, I think this question builds really well on the remarks of the other panelists. Our position at the MasterCard Center for Inclusive Growth has always been that this effort needs to be a shared cross-sector effort for real impact, engaging all, public sector, private sector, civil sector, and research beyond, to really move the needle forward. And we need partnerships that are not just transactional, but transformative and multifaceted. That goes to designing infrastructure with inclusion and underserved segments in mind directly. I'll give an example just to add some color to how we think about it. In Indonesia, you may know that the Indonesian government has a goal to reach a target of 9 million Indonesians to have them become digitally literate by 2030. And so we've been working with them to leverage the expertise and strengths of MasterCard and bring that to bear, in addition to strengths of other sectors. So we have expertise in cybersecurity and STEM training that we actually leverage in-house for our own employees. We also know NGOs that have really strong training formats for the local context in Indonesia. And we've got vocational platforms in Indonesia to help scale these programs. And so we did a public-private partnership with the Indonesian government and built in upskilling programs across cybersecurity, how to digitize operations for micro entrepreneurs, and wider STEM training with a gender-sensitive lens. And we've seen really positive results. And in fact, we met our commitment to reach 100,000 participants in the program and actually exceeded it. And so we're now looking to scale that with the government. And I think that's a testament to, how we can think about leveraging strengths of different sectors to look towards a more inclusive digital economy that prepares individuals and businesses for a rapidly evolving future.
Thank you.
May I quickly, sorry. Go ahead.
Yes, go ahead, Ravi.
I think Ali's example is terrific, and I was thinking of a way to add my 2 bits to it. If you want to think about the role of enterprises in this, and Ali's example is perfectly on point. You can think of, imagine a highway. Imagine a highway, and we all know that roads and highways typically are what governments build. Now, as a private enterprise, you could either think of your role as, why do I care about the highway? All I need to do is run my car on it. Okay, great. But a thoughtful enterprise also understands that your vehicle is only as smooth and efficient as the highways that it runs on is. And you have a role to invest in the constant upkeep of said infrastructure, enhance said infrastructure, and also ensure that the safety and security of the passengers on that highway. So enterprises have, and it goes beyond self-interest. It is enlightened self-interest, right? To care for the highway and for the passengers, in those cars. So I think what MasterCard is doing is terrific in that sense. Upskilling is important, because if you have, if you have consumers that, in some sense, that are better equipped to demand better, the fancy term for that is, raising the demand sophistication of a consumer. More sophisticated consumers demand better services, which means there is an opportunity to create better services, which benefits everybody. That's a terrific example of raising the skills and building, shall we say, better, investing in the demand sophistication of consumers of the future.
I think Ali and Ravi are on the money. Nolwazi, when you think about it, the jobs that exist today didn't exist years ago. This means that there's a shift within the entrepreneurship space, and entrepreneurs have a huge role to play here with the creation of the jobs that come with the new technology that we're living in. So yeah, on the money with what MasterCard is doing is very.
I just want to take a sidestep before I continue with my questions, and touch on something that Ravi spoke briefly on, around data management and quality as we move into the digital era. Because as we move there, or rather as we're deepening our movement into the digital world, data is the new gold. And so the quality must be maintained, it must be managed accurately, whilst also considering something we'll speak about in more detail later. It's protection and cybersecurity. The cybersecurity frameworks for protection must be set in place and fit for purpose. Are we seeing a symbiotic relationship, the deeper we go into the digital world, between cybersecurity, data privacy and protection, and data management? What do you think? And I'm opening this up to all three of you, that the three functions are somehow in the future moving towards having, and not it being a choice of, yeah, it's a nice to have, but having to work together, to collaborate, because their strengths are complementary.
Nolwazi, would you mind repeating that question one more time? I want to make sure I understood it.
So I'm saying that as we go deeper into the being a digital world, because we already are, most things are digital now. It's still people who are excluded, and that needs to be addressed. But as economies are deepening their digital transformation, do you foresee that the different functions, what we see now as being different functions of the function of cybersecurity, the function of data management, data governance, the function of data privacy and protection, eventually being so symbiotic that they almost seem like they are three in one because of the complementarity of their functions and how they really do need to work together as things become even more and more digital?
Absolutely, and let me see if I can connect it, to our conversation a little earlier, where Ali took the example of upskilling. 9 million was it Indonesians by 2030. Now, part of upskilling is not just teaching, teaching, imparting, to the consumers of the future, the ability to use technology. It is about using it in a way that safeguards them, right? So in some sense, it is a bit like, let's see if we can take another example, since I started with the example of, highways and automobiles and passengers. But in several ways, this is like teaching people how to drive on a road. Now, there's a reason why, I can't think of any part of the world where you can drive on the streets without, or ride a two-wheeler or a three-wheeler or a four-wheeler, or drive a four-wheeler without a license. Now, said license requires a certain number of skills. You ought to know what the rules of the road are. You ought to know what the red, red, yellow, and green lights mean, and so on and so forth. There are rules in several ways. What is that part of it? Of how to be safe and how to practice defensive driving, as we call it here in America. How to practice defensive driving is the equivalent of good cyber hygiene or good digital hygiene. How do you keep yourself safe? How do you keep your password safe? How do you, how do you make sure everyone, irrespective of whether they are, they have a PhD or they are barely literate, because they're all in the digital economy. And by the way, several PhDs don't know how to operate, digital technologies. To make sure all of them have the basic hygiene of safeguarding themselves, two-factor authentication, making it easier for people to practice, the rules of the road that is extremely important. So you can't have one without the other. So you can't have digital inclusion without teaching those that we include the rules of the road. It's a bit like trying to, give people vehicles to drive on, and send them on the streets without teaching them how to drive or how to practice safe driving. Is that make sense?
That makes sense. Thank you, Ali. And thank you, Ravi. Anyone want to add to this, or you can move on, because I did just throw a curveball that I hadn't heard you on.
No problem. I think Ravi captured it really well, and I'll just add, there's of course there's upskilling and preparing the end user for how to protect themselves, and then there are of course responsibilities for other actors in a space, which we've talked about, the shared ownership across sectors. So I think, thinking about data privacy and developing principles is really critical. It's something MasterCard is taking quite seriously and has developed a set of principles for thinking about responsible data privacy. And that's an important role for any entity that has data on consumers to think about. And then, of course, there's the role of consumer protection from government, and which is critical and in varying levels of development, right? These cybercrime is on the rise. It's expected to grow 15% year over year through 2030. And so, it's been incredibly difficult in many countries for the regulation to keep up and sufficiently protect individuals, which is why the onus ends up being on the individual. But in an ideal world, you have ownership from the individual, from organizations that own or that have data, and from the regulation side as well. So I think we were trying to strive towards that on all levels.
Thank you, Ali. Anything to add, Nothando?
We've covered it all, because there is a symbiotic relationship between all three. at the end of the day because of how everything is now on the web, and we need to ensure we safeguard our people's integrity, confidentiality, and the availability of information. So whilst we move and more people participate in the digital economy, cyber crime becomes more sophisticated. So we need policies and laws in place that will ensure that we prevent all of that from happening.
Thank you all so much. I think I'll ask you one question as we have limited time remaining. So looking
Nolwazi,
at,
may I quickly, there's one more Ali made a terrific point, and I'd be remiss if I don't add an important statistic to her point about growing cyber crime. Let's take the example of India. When we think of India, we think of Aadhaar, we think of 300 million people getting included into the financial system, 300 million people getting included into the digital financial system. But guess what? According to one of the latest FBI reports, Indians are also among the top 5 countries in the world, or India is among the top 5 countries in the world with rising cyber crime. As measured by the number of victims of cybercrime. So doing one without the other is a recipe for problems down the road. And I kind of want to put a fine point on that. Sorry, please continue.
No, that was great to bring up. It's always great to hear from real life case studies because I mean, all throughout COVID, cybercrime was the biggest risk. Things about and for people and digital transformation. Cybercrime was the biggest risk that was highlighted during COVID because people were very desperate, they were out of jobs, and they were more susceptible to these fraudulent scams because they were desperate for anything that seemed like it would help them get a job or help them get money, even if it's a little bit of money, they would succumb to it because they were that desperate. So I think it's very important for you to mention those. So I want to close off with this one question, which touches on every one of our streams, because ultimately climate change is a challenge for every country and every industry and everyone, even in our own homes, whether you decide to be the person that leaves the TV on all night or decides to leave the fan or the heater all night. How can we ensure that as the digital inclusive, how can we ensure that as we develop or create more inclusive digital economies, that they are also environmentally friendly and contribute to a net zero world? So ensuring that they start from the beginning using renewable energy with the aim of being sustainable that way and not starting off on fossil fuels or any investments that go down the direction of polluting the economy or the world.
Take a stab at it, Nolwazi. I think if we prioritize measurements, we could go a long way in making sure that we can circumvent some of the problems that we have harming the environment. So this means we ensure measurement of impact areas like carbon dioxide emissions of digital technology. And then we can use data, and organizations can put tools in place with algorithms to optimize operations to minimize environmental impact. I think if we prioritize measurements and use the digital tools at our disposal, that's one way of doing it. You could use your AIs and build them in your digital technology to measure the environmental impact.
Thank you, Nothando. Anyone else?
Let me see if I can take a crack at it. critical part of digitalization, as I in our sort of expansive definition of digitalization, is is transaction, how we pay, and one of the most stickiest, and shall we say, one of the information commodities that has been the stickiest and most resistant to digitization, which is turning from physical into digital form, is money. We've all moved from cassette tapes to CDs to Spotify or Pandora or whatever it is that your favorite streaming service. We've done that with VHS tapes to DVDs to streaming from Netflix. If you think of money is an information commodity as well, but a lot of paper money exists. Now, one of the studies that we did, albeit we did it for the United States, that doesn't change the fact that the lessons do not apply to the rest of the world. We measured the environmental cost of cash paper money. Turns out, if you think of the life cycle of paper money, three things happen. You print money, and then you send it to banks and ATMs and what have you. People and businesses pull out that money, use it, it's in circulation, and then there is an end of life. So think of it as origination, creation, operation, and end of life. Now, end of life is basically a paper bill gets torn, it goes and is given a dignified burial or a cremation, as the case may be, and another note takes its place. Turns out 98% of the environmental cost of paper money comes from operation, circulation, because think about it, there is a lot of CO2 emitted in the air every time a paper bill travels from place A to place B, from the consumer's pocket to the business, from the business to the bank, and then back from the bank to the ATM, and then on the cycle goes. Now, there is a very logical way to just extract a tremendous amount of CO2 through our human interactions coming just from paper money, if you think about it. So that's one, no-brainer of a step to reduce CO2. And then we can talk about several others, but we don't have enough time.
Yeah, we really don't. So I'd like for us to give you each 1 minute, please, 1 minute each to give your closing remarks. And then we'll say goodbye to our participants who have taken their time. And I thank you to all of you, of our participants who've taken your time to join us today for this discussion. I know I've learned a lot of things from our guest speakers, and I want to thank you all so much for taking your time to join us today to share your insights. So I'll start off with you, Ali, and then I'll move on to Nothando and end with Ravi with your closing remarks. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today, and looking forward to working with all of you and anyone dialing in on advancing a more inclusive digital economy. I'll just use my 1 minute to share a couple remarks on the sustainability piece, because I think it is so important. We talked a lot about mitigation efforts in the digital economy, but I think an under-discussed lens to that is adaptation, climate adaptation for those who are most exposed and least resilient to the intensifying impacts of climate change. We need to do better at ensuring that these folks are connected to solutions. And there is a need for inclusive and innovative financial technologies to play a role in ensuring that these vulnerable segments can remain resilient in the face of climate change, whether that's loan products for weather disasters or pay-as-you-go cooling products to keep people productive when there's intensified heat. And it's a new and emerging space that requires investment and innovation, and I hope to see more conversation there. So with that, I'll pass to my other colleagues for closing remarks.
And everyone else for the opportunity to discuss this rather important subject. And as someone from an emerging economy, I'm super excited for our future as we move into this inclusiveness into the digital economy, and learning from countries like the USA that have taken it very far. So thanks again, and I can't wait to participate in more conversations that speak to the very subject of inclusiveness and the digital economy.
Thank you, Nothando. Thank you, Ali. And over to you, Ravi.
The one message to everybody who's dialed from various parts of the world. First off, thank you for spending your hour with us, and hope this has been helpful and informative in some sense. One thing that our research keeps popping up as an insight over and over is that institutions shape digital economies in their likeness. So what kind of a digital economy and a digital society you want to participate and be a part of is a function of what kind of institutions are, laying the pathways and creating the groundwork and setting the rules of the road for it. So demand better of your institutions. You demand better of your institutions will deliver for you, as will the markets. Demand better.
Thank you so much to my guest speakers, my panelists. I really appreciate your insights, and I hope the audience has enjoyed listening to you. I'm sure Pathway will be sending a message now here on Zoom saying we have like 1 minute left, or I'm sure we've gone over. But I really appreciate you taking your time to thoroughly explain and take all our participants and myself through all of the questions we had prepared for you, and sharing your insights with such patience and command of the subject matter. I definitely hope to see you soon, if not in Pathway, in other webinars that we host, and so that you can share your insights even more. As this is an exciting topic, inclusive digital economies is just currently booming right now, and everyone's interested to hear what's going on, thinking about digital transformation and where do we begin? How do we start? Do we draw a strategy? Do we find a technical provider? What happens? And so these insights will be helpful in helping countries know where to start and what the next steps should be. So I really appreciate your time with us, and I appreciate the time the participants have spent with us, and I look forward to future engagements with you. Thank you all, and enjoy the rest of your morning, afternoon, and evenings. Goodbye.
Bye. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.